For today's classic interview, we are going back, maybe fittingly for what's going on right now, to non science panic over something that is not nearly as big a problem as some people claimed it to be. Make the connection if you want to what's going on right now. I'm speaking about my interview with Ted Broer. In the midst of the Ebola situation in 2014, Ted Broer showed up on the David Pakman show and did just totally alarmist non-science craziness. And I think that this will remind us a lot about what's going on right now. And in retrospect, now with 2020 hindsight, we see why the stuff that Ted Broer was saying was so crazy and out of this world. So let's go back to my interview from July of 2014 with Ted Broer about Ebola. I'm pleased to welcome Ted Broer to the program. He's a biochemist, scientist, author, and consumer health advocate. He's concerned about the potential of infectious disease, including Ebola, crossing the southern border of the United States. Ted, a real pleasure to have you on today. Let's start as broadly as possible. What's your concern with the border and Ebola?
Well, the problem I have, David, is right now over in Africa, it's spread to 7 different countries. The CDC, or the people in charge in Africa, are telling us over 1,000 people are infected. It's gone to some of the major cities in Africa. It's basically being uncontained in Africa. Over close to 700 now are confirmed dead. This has been going on months and months and months, and the growth is continuing. The problem that I have with any disease like this is its transmission via airplane or via other folks that are coming into the country that are not being checked for health. Plus, I personally believe the African countries that are infected with Ebola, they really need to go in and they need to start grounding and closing the airports until they get this under control, so this thing's not going to be spread. We know now that we have a couple of medical personnel from the United States that have also been infected with Ebola, and we also know that these medical personnel were taking every precaution they possibly could not to get the disease. And yet now they've also become infected. So we've got some serious issues, especially with the border in the southern United States. And this isn't an immigration issue. I'm not getting into that whatsoever. What I want to talk about is the fact that we need to have some type of screening process, which is difficult since I believe the executive office has said now they want to have at least 6 million folks come across the border by the end of the summer. Well, whatever numbers they pick or whatever amount of people they allow to come across the border, there needs to be some type of screening process for these folks coming across the border to allow them basically to learn what they're doing.
So let's go through this step by step if we can. I guess that gives us kind of a good...
Hang on one second. Please leave. Please don't ever do that again, Harrison. I'm so sorry, David.
It's craziness over there, Ted. So Ted, listen, I want to go through this step by step, right? Because we have a couple of different factors here. Now, I'm going to take you at your word that this is not an immigration issue. So I believe you're being honest when you tell me that.
Well, no, David, if we have to have immigration reform. Everybody knows that in the United States.
Right. No, I understand. But Ted, let me now go through what you said, just so we can kind of build on it if possible.
Yes.
So if the issue here really is just the possibility of contagion, right? Let's explore what's most likely. Now, the CDC in the United States has said that the concern over Ebola in the Western Hemisphere, particularly coming through the US-Mexico border, is incredibly low on the list of concerns. Now, you talked about a screening process. So let me pose a question to you, and then I'll let you answer it as you see fit.
Thank you.
If your primary concern is what is most likely to be an unscreened person bringing disease into this country, people fly in legally all the time from Asia. And the possibility that they would bring in bird flu, for example, they are not screened. The possibility of that is, and when I say this, I'm not exaggerating, orders of magnitude higher than someone from Central America coming through Mexico and bringing Ebola into the United States, since again, there are no cases of it in the Western Hemisphere. Why are you here today talking to me about the US-Mexico border and Ebola instead of Asia and bird flu, for example, right?
Well, no, that's an excellent. You're absolutely right. I have no argument with you whatsoever concerning this. Here's how I'm looking at all of this. Bird flu does not have a 90% fatality rate. There are very good medical protocols that are used when a person comes down with bird flu to help them recover from the bird flu. This isn't bird flu. This could unleash a pandemic. I mean, we have it uncontrolled in 7 countries in Africa right now. And my only concern is this: the border guards have said they have other people coming in from other countries that are not from Mexico that are trying to sneak in through our southern borders.
That's true.
But David, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not there. I'm just reading. I've just read the same stuff that you've read by the same people that are supposed to be experts in that who work in that area.
Yeah, so
So
to clarify, just so we're on the same page, what you're saying is true. People are coming through the US-Mexico border from other countries. But again, according to the CDC and all experts, it's all from countries that have zero instances of Ebola. And these are individuals who most likely don't have the means to fly to Africa, contract Ebola, come back to Central America, come through Mexico and into the US. This is why, to me, as an observer, it seems hypocritical for individuals who now want to make Ebola a US-Mexico security issue when they've been ignoring all of the other real disease threats.
David, I haven't been ignoring any of them. We also have tuberculosis that's been shown to be in these folks coming from Mexico. We have dengue fever. We have last year I went to South America and I went into Ecuador. They gave me a whole bunch of shots they wanted me to take before I was even allowed to get off the cruise ship into Ecuador, because they said you can't go into Ecuador because of these different diseases that are prevalent here.
Yeah.
We know that people aren't just coming from Mexico, they're coming from all the different parts of South America. What I'm saying is this: if we're going to allow immigration from Mexico, which I don't particularly have a problem with. That's not what this show is about.
Okay.
We need to have some type of screening protocol for everything, for tuberculosis, for Ebola, all of these different types of diseases, which we really don't need in the United States. Having open borders without any type of immigration screening, to me, doesn't make any sense. I know when my mother came here from Germany back in the early 50s, basically after World War II, she had to be completely medically examined to make sure she didn't have any diseases coming in from Central Europe. I have a friend of mine who ended up bringing a wife in from Thailand years ago, and she had to be completely screened and checked for medical conditions before she was even allowed to leave Thailand, and she had to get basically a letter of good health from the Thai government before she could come into the United States.
Okay, good. So I take you at your word that this is just genuine concern. So let me.
If we have some type of isolation protocol that we could keep people basically in some type of isolation facility for 10 days, 12 days, 14 days, whatever times it takes for some of these diseases to actually manifest in the body, and they're not just carriers, and basically some type of isolation, some type of quarantine protocol, that's fine.
Yeah, but so I want to get to that. Okay, so what's the principle that Ted Broer uses to determine who should be screened and for what when they enter the U.S.? In other words, you've spoken very specifically about the U.S.-Mexico border and Central Americans, but what's the principle you would use that you would apply to everyone?
And that's an excellent question. I think everybody coming in to live in the United States of America who's coming from any country which may carry third world diseases like Mexico or Ecuador or Panama or any place like that, basically we have to understand that we've got to avoid these diseases from being trafficked into the United States. Now, David, you know as well as I do.
Okay, but now hold on, Ted. I don't want to let you get too far ahead of each piece, because I figure it's good to kind of analyze each one of them. So what specific diseases native to or common in Central and South America are the ones that you've identified as to why this should be a policy specifically with those immigrants?
Well, I believe they all should be screened for tuberculosis, number one. That's how that needs to be. Number two, I believe they need to be screened for dengue fever. I believe that all of these folks need to be screened for those too. And I also believe they need to be put in some type of isolation just to make sure they don't have other types of diseases such as Ebola. But now, as far as Ebola coming over to this country, that's probably the last disease we want to have come over here. And again, unchecked immigration from any third world country, David, is going to increase the likelihood of certain diseases coming into the United States. Whether we want it to or not, we really need to have some type of screening protocol. I mean, normally people are screened, they've got to go through a program in order to become an American citizen or to get into the United States. That's not happening right now.
Yeah, but Ted, I'm curious, as it happens, I looked up the Bloomberg healthcare efficiency rankings of different countries. As it turns out, the Mexican healthcare system is ranked as significantly more efficient than the U.S. healthcare system.
Have you been to Mexico, David?
Hold on a second now. Now here's where Ted, although you may be able to anecdotally tell me about specific places in Mexico where there are terrible things, if we look at the rankings, and I'll tell you how they're measured, okay, just so we're 100% clear. Okay. If we weigh life expectancy, relative per capita cost of healthcare, absolute per capita cost of healthcare, and healthcare results, right? the Mexican healthcare system is actually more efficient than the U.S. healthcare system. Now, I want to be very clear. Hold on now, Ted. Hold on now, Ted. I'm going to give you a chance to respond. I just want to make sure I'm clear about what barometer I'm using.
Yeah.
Because the U.S. spends so much on healthcare.
That's correct.
That brings down the efficiency. So I understand the mathematics of it.
That's
but
right.
my question to you is this. Do you advocate screening people who are in the U.S. on some kind of regular basis who have not come from other countries, because dengue fever is already in the U.S.
Yes.
Drug-resistant tuberculosis is already in the U.S. You cited those too. Yes. Should the government say, you know what, we're screening anybody who goes to public school for these things? Or what should the rule be to be fair?
No, I'm not agreeing with that at all. Number one is you're giving me statistics based on Mexican statistics. When Mexico's a third world country, they have very little money to put into their healthcare system, so they're absolutely going to rate higher than the United States as far as total per capita income spent on healthcare. That's a completely erroneous argument on that, David.
Well, hold on a second. But so why has no? You're just saying you don't believe the facts, basically.
Here's the whole argument.
Yeah.
The United States is pretty much leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, and to cancer from any industrialized nation. We have millions and tens of millions of people taking the drug Prozac and Zoloft and Adderall and Ritalin and Concerta for children. We've got all of these people taking different statin drugs, which all have their own host of diseases.
Yeah.
All these different conditions are being treated by all of these diseases, but yet we're still ranked as one of the sickest nations from the industrialized standpoint in the entire world. So I'm not saying to you that the United States is the beacon of health, because it certainly isn't.
I'll say.
The leading cause of death in children aged 14 and under, other than cancer in the United States, other than accidents, is cancer in the United States. We have the highest leukemia rate in children of any country in the world. But Mexico, I have been to Mexico. I have been to Mexico repeatedly.
So have I.
Know the disease rates they have down there. They have all kinds of diseases that we've pretty much eradicated in the country. And to answer your second question, if a person contacts dengue fever or they come out with some type of disease that we know that's highly contagious, yes, if they go to their doctor, they're diagnosed with those types of diseases, I believe they should be quarantined until they get past that disease. That's how I feel about that. If you don't agree with me, that's okay. But that's what we need to do. I'm not saying that the Mexicans are any less or any better than we are. I'm saying that our healthcare system in the United States is broken. It doesn't work.
Hey, now, Ted, you're saying a lot of stuff I like. Now we're agreeing.
Okay. But what I'm saying is if a person comes across the borders and they're exhibiting signs of being sick with fever or chills, or they've got lice or whatever, they need to be treated. They need to be put into quarantine to make sure they're okay. That goes with everybody. But the United States, are you kidding me? We got 30, 40 million people taking statin drugs, which have been shown to cause kidney failure. Are you joking me? Now we got dialysis centers all over the United States set up because of the drugs that people are taking. We've turned into an entire drug culture in the United States for prescription drugs.
Hey, all right, Ted. Now we're talking. Yeah, I wish we're getting a lot of points of agreement here on a kind of different topic.
No, the reality is this: the United States has one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. We have one of the worst preventive healthcare systems in the world. Instead of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a person before they die, trying to keep them alive for a couple more weeks, we should teach them how to eat right when they're in grade school, for heaven's sakes. We should teach them how to eat the right kind of foods. We need to learn and tell them to stay away from GMO foods, stay away from all the chemicals in the diet and all the sugar and the high fructose corn syrup. Those are the biggest problems in our country. But what I'm saying is the immune system of the United States is pretty lousy. 60% of the population of this country is obese.
Yeah.
Now we're going to throw a disease in this country with everybody's immune system already impaired. It's going to sweep through the United States like the United States has no healthcare system whatsoever. So the reality is this: Mexico has a lousy healthcare system per capita. We may be worse, but the reality is we're not any better than Mexico as far as I'm concerned, because we're leading the world in industrialized nations.
All right, I got it. Ted, listen, I wish we had more time. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. As my audience knows, I think the Ebola concerns are a little bit of what I call concern trolling. I know you disagree, but it's been a fascinating conversation. Ted Broer has been our guest. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, David.